You're welcome back. You're watching Business Incorporated on Channels Television. Now, we're looking at ESG. ESG stands for Environmental and Social Governance. Now, investors are increasingly applying these non-financial factors as part of their analysis process. What will be the impact on the African continent as we see deforestation and biodiversity lose a major challenge at these times? Looking at the case studies of Naturetech in action in Uganda's palm oil and West Africa's cocoa sectors. It shows how Naturetech is being deployed by the different members of the ecosystem, including farmer organizations, traders, government, and investors. Well, to have this discussion and help us understand this even more, we have the Chief Narrative Officer of Claire's Advisory UK, that's Ted George. Hi, Ted. Good afternoon. Good to have you.
Great to be back.
So ESG is becoming mainstream as companies seek to make their business fully sustainable. What risks is there bringing for West African commodity producers and exporters?
Well, I think the risks are huge because, as you said, ESG is mainstream now. And if you look at commodity production and exports, it touches on all the three issues. On the environmental front, there's, of course, biodiversity loss, deforestation as well. And then when you look at the social side, we have issues like forced labor, which is a major concern, particularly when it comes to cocoa. And then, of course, corruption and fraud, which you get on the governance side. So the big risk here is if you look at countries like, for example, the European Union, they are discussing draconian new laws that will come in that will effectively ban all trade in commodities that are linked to forestry destruction and forced labor. And so the real risk here is that a lot of these companies could find they can no longer do business with other parts of the world. So huge risks here, and all companies need to go through this transition to really fully embrace ESG.
Yeah, seeing that the world is becoming more technology-driven now, how can technology be helped to help these companies meet up with their ESG commitments?
Well, it's truly incredible. This latest generation of technology, they call it Naturetech or climate tech. Really, essentially what it is putting together existing technology in different ways. But to give you an example, you can be using satellite data, LiDAR, which is laser and radar data, as well as sensors on the ground. And you can immediately see areas where there is deforestation going. You can visualize all of this and say this area is protected, this farm specifically is encroached on the area. You can also spot, for example, where there are fires which are unauthorized going out, immediately send someone to do something about it. And when it comes to issues also like child labor and fraud, you have these amazing traceability tools nowadays. You can tell exactly where, for example, cocoa is made, and you can trace the beans from the moment they are deposited in a warehouse the whole way system to the chocolate bar at the end. So that gives you this kind of degree of insight that you can't possibly get with previous technology. And that's going to be into ESG. Companies need to prove that they are really trying to monitor what they're doing on each of these different indicators and doing something about it, rather than simply saying, I'm sorry, we didn't know.
And there's also using agri-tech to boost crop yields. Do we have examples of that in Africa so far?
Yes, I mean, there's quite an interesting company, a UK company called Outfield. They do a lot of work in South Africa and East Africa as well, particularly on orchards. And what they're able to do using drones with photographs and satellites as well is they can track specific areas of plantations. And they can say, for example, this bit of the plantation is too dry, it needs watering. These particular trees need spraying now. And more importantly, these other trees don't. You very often find when there is treatment with fertilizers, and some of which are toxic, you either do a whole crop or you don't do any at all. So it can be so much more efficient. Using this own data, you can even tell the exact right time to start picking certain crops as well. All of that translates into much lower losses, much higher yields. And if you bear in mind, something like 50% of crops on average in Africa are lost after they're produced. They are rot or they are picked at the wrong time. That can lead to a huge increase in output without actually having to use any more water or fertilizer or land.
Well, sounds really interesting. But how accessible are these innovative and technology, measures to both boost, the yields from agric and all that? How accessible is it on the continent in Africa?
Well, it really depends what you're talking about. I mean, when we talk about the high-level Naturetech, which is using satellite data and artificial intelligence to crunch it all, that is quite expensive, it's true, although it's improving. But some of the things are relatively cheap. I mean, if you want to be able to use technology of drones to look at your crops, you could buy a drone off the shelf, as in you get it from Amazon or any major supplier anywhere in Africa, and you can have a company which will literally send the data to the drone, and it will just automatically fly off and do whatever prospection you want when it comes to data. So it's becoming more affordable. Apps on phones now, you can use them to actually show your GPS position. You could prove exactly where your farm is, for example, stuff like that. So a lot of the technology is becoming cheaper. It's just the putting it all together, which is expensive at the moment. But I think we should expect that that is also going to go down in price as with technology, it simply becomes more powerful and easier to access.
Yeah, we do hope that we see maybe more supplies, more innovations will make it more accessible and cheaper for Africans. Thank you so much, Ted George, Chief Narrative Officer at Cleos Advisory UK, for sharing your thoughts with us this afternoon.